a full house is always a great problem to have. I'm so, overwhelmed by the attendance and the interest in these two lovely ladies and the message they bring. I know that we're in football season, and a lot of you guys are putting together your fantasy football teams. Well, I've decided that I'm going to be putting together my fantasy Patriot Freedom Fighter League. I started this, several years ago with Trevor Loudon when I began a partnership with him and his speaking engagements. A couple years ago, I added Dr. Peter Pry, who was speaking about the EMP issues. I added Elizabeth 2 years ago, and so many other people, Frank Gaffney and some other favorites that I've added to my fantasy freedom fighter team. And tonight I'm really blessed to be able to add Katie Hopkins to that growing list of patriots that I consider close to my heart and so forth. So thank you, ladies, for being here. Some of you may have heard Elizabeth on one of her last 2 trips here. She comes to us from Austria, from Vienna, Austria, where she's been persecuted and prosecuted basically for being a teller of truth, not of lies, not of innuendo, but simply of truth. And she'll remind you a little bit tonight about her, the process that she went through, what she's been prosecuted and persecuted for, and the update on where that stands, and a little bit about what's going on with her love of our American Constitution and some other things. And Katie Hopkins, who many of you have maybe seen on YouTube videos, sometimes on Fox News before she was banned, and she is banned from Fox News for being a truth teller, believe it or not. So she's here from Great Britain. I had a delightful brunch with her today and learned all about her family and their personalities, but more than anything, the issues that are bedeviling not only Great Britain, but Europe in general, and what the implications are for the United States. And so she's going to bring us a very entertaining and feisty message concerning the issues involving our Western culture. It's not just Great Britain or the US, it's the total Western culture that's under siege these days. So with that, with those thoughts in mind, I'm going to turn this, shame on me. After I had my folks bring the flag in for us, if you'd all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, I would so appreciate it.
Do you have the words anywhere?
Oh, please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'll make a comment on the pledge that I do frequently. If you're standing next to me when I'm saying the pledge, you will not hear me say, one nation under God. There's no comma. And so if you're standing next to me, you may look at me funny when I just string the words together, because there is no comma and no pause. And so I just kind of leave that with you as a bit of trivia. So without further ado, please welcome Elizabeth Sabadich Wolff.
I hope you all didn't just come for me, because I do have someone special sitting right next to me, and this event is called Katie and the Wolf. And before I explain a little bit about why it's called Katie and the Wolf, I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. I know, well, from Regina, that it's football season, and you could be doing a million different things on a, Tuesday night. I always feel very blessed and privileged to see so many of you take the time from your busy schedules to come and hear me, and in this case, us speak. Because what we're about to tell you is not good news. We're going to leave you with a positive message, with an upbeat message, but until we get to that point, it's not going to be a good story. You might enjoy hearing it because Katie presents it in a way that will make you laugh, but actually that laugh will kind of get stuck in your throat, and you're going to think, why am I laughing? when somebody tells her something that I'm not going to tell you right now because she will tell you. Again, thank you very much for coming out tonight. There is a lot for me to talk about, and as you saw outside, my book is out. And I remember specifically, it was last November, I think I was here, right after the first verdict of the European Court of Human Rights came down, and I went on a whirlwind tour of the United States because I needed to ask for donations because my lawyer had slapped a bill of 40,000 euros, which is about 45K in US dollars, on me. And I remember very distinctively how I was asked, well, when are you finally going to write a book about your story? And I can tell you, I'm very proud. You're the third group that I am so honored to present my book to you. But I won't tell you everything. You're going to have to read it yourself. Okay, I will tell you a few bits and pieces, basically, but I will ask you to read it. And for those, how many of you know what actually happened to me? Well, there are a few, but most of you folks don't know what happened to me. Well, first of all, it might surprise you when I tell you that I am not an American citizen. I was probably one of the 2 people in this room who didn't say the pledge, even though it gives me the shivers every time. I am an Austrian citizen. I am a diplomat's brat. My father is a retired diplomat, and that is why I grew up in different countries. I was born in Switzerland. I spent some of my kindergarten years in New York, where I learned English and the Pledge of Allegiance. And then I lost my English because my father went, or actually was posted to Tehran in 1977. And in 1977, for those of you who know your history, was the pre-revolutionary time, the Shah era. So I know what it was like in Iran when Islam was not yet pervasive in the forefront. There were not any hijabs or abayas. Well, you don't call them abayas in Iran. You call them chador. When you could still go skiing. I love skiing, which is why I love Colorado so much. And when you could still drink beer, when you could still buy Coke, you could still buy Sprite, and you could move around freely. And all that changed in late 1978, and you will read about this in my book, when all of a sudden there were demonstrations and black-clad women in the streets, and all of a sudden my parents, my sister and I were kicked out of the country, the dependents at the Austrian embassy and all the other embassies as well. And how I recount of how my parents were separated for many months at a time. My dad had to return to the embassy. My mom had to take care of me and my sister in Vienna. And we went back to Iran frequently, and I saw how it was a gradual, but actually a very fast gradual. I know it sounds strange, but that's what I'm trying to tell you. It was very fast, but gradual. The process of a country changing from a fairly secular country to an Islamic one. And that's what we're witnessing in Europe right now. We in Europe, and Katie will tell you about that too, we in Austria and in Germany are witnessing this change from a secular country to a more and more Islamized society. And because I saw this in Iran, I didn't like it. It felt uncomfortable. I was only 7 years old, or 8 years old. But something felt ominous, something felt wrong. I couldn't pinpoint it. But I didn't like seeing all these women covered up as a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old. And then came the revolution, and then came the hostage taking of the American embassy personnel in Tehran. And then came the time when my mother and my sister and I spent our summer holidays in Tehran with my dad. And then came the time when my mother cooked meals for those 2 American hostages held at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Tehran. And she had to do it secretly at night because apparently she didn't want me and my sister to know that she was cooking for the hostages, because then we would ask, well, why aren't you cooking for us? There wasn't a lot of food anymore. It was already, like I said, revolutionary turmoil. It wasn't easy. And then came 1980, July 1980. You will read about this in the book in more detail, when all of a sudden I woke up during an afternoon nap with my mom and my sister lying next to me, and there was banging on the door. I could hear it outside. And I looked out the window and I saw that our house was on fire. And our Iranian maid apparently was upset with my mother because she had caught her stealing. My mother had caught the maid stealing. And she wanted revenge, and she set the house on fire. And we made it out, barely. The Iranians saved us, our next-door neighbors. I talk about that. But again, I hold no grudge because I have very good memories of Iran. But my experience in Iran led me to understand, from a young girl's perspective, what Islam can do to you, how it can change you, how it can change a society, how it can change the people around you. And this is what I'm talking about right now. This is what I want to tell you. You want your society to be an American one, not an Islamized one. Because America is good. You don't need to change something that is good. So anyway, we stopped, we finished with Iran in 1980, right at the start of the Iran-Iraq War. Made our way back to Austria, and in 1982, my dad returned to Baghdad and had us, my family, join him for Christmas celebration. So I got to know what the other side of the Iran-Iraq conflict looked like. So I know what war is like. I was 12 years old at the time, 11. You'll read about that too. And then came probably one of the most important experiences in my life. We moved to Chicago. Why are you laughing? It's flat, it's cold, it's not Denver, it doesn't have any mountains, so I didn't like it that much. But I had to learn English again. I had lost it almost completely by that time. And in September of 1983, I began school, and within the second trimester, I was an honor student. And I integrated, I would say. I didn't assimilate, but I integrated. Probably you can sort of gauge my degree of integration. And Dave Petty's, I don't know, he's somewhere in the back. He knows, because he always has to carry a few bags with him every time he comes to Europe, that I love my cheese popcorn and my light beer. Okay, that's why I can honestly tell you I think I've integrated. But it was a difficult time for me because I was searching for my identity. People ask me, well, when are you becoming an American citizen? And I understand that, I get that, because if you're a legal alien in the US, you aspire to become an American citizen, and I get that. America is an exceptional country. But I am an Austrian. This is who I am. It will never change. But I felt offended at the time because I was searching for my own identity. One of the most really life-changing experiences was social studies class, 8th grade in Chicago. At my school, we had to study the Constitution in order to graduate from grade school. And of course, the rebel in me said, well, why do I have to study the Constitution? Shouldn't I be studying my own Constitution first? Yeah, that's right, up to a certain point. Because I'm very grateful that I didn't get a choice. Very, very grateful. Because I got to study what I personally think is the greatest document ever written. And it's a simple booklet that I carry with me. It's a book called The Constitution of the United States of America. It's something that an 8th grader can understand. It's very, very simple. It's straightforward. You don't need anything else. And you certainly don't need the 5,000-page Lisbon Treaty, which is our constitution in the European Union. And the writers, the authors of this terrible constitution even admitted that they have no idea what it actually says. Okay? So, just a reminder, this is your homework. You need to fight for this. And if you've never read it, which I doubt, but just in case, read it. And what made such an impression on me was, and still is, the First Amendment. Of course, coupled with the Second Amendment, I understand that. But the First Amendment is what has guided my life, my activism for freedom of speech, and what probably has, probably ultimately got me in trouble with the Austrian law. So, Constitution, I got a C on the test. It was okay. I got to graduate, got to go on. And then, in the 1990s, I'll fast forward because you do hopefully have the book already, and if you don't, please do get it. In the 1990s, early 1990s, actually August 2nd, 1990. Do you all remember what happened on August 2nd, 1990? You gotta be kidding me. What happened on August 2nd, 1990? Thank you. The invasion of Kuwait by Saddam Hussein. History class 101? I was there. I woke up to another war. Luckily, I was already 19. I knew what to do. Went outside for the last time with all the helicopters above me and got some food staples to get us through the first few days. I won't tell you how I got back out, because again, that's a chapter in the book. It's a diary, actually, and it recounts what actually took place. And Saddam Hussein basically kicked me out of Iraq, and I decided I wanted to return on my own terms. So I did that. In 1997, I got a job at the Austrian embassy once again, where I stamped visas for 3.5 years and met my husband, and got to know Islam very well, on a personal level and on a professional level. By professional I mean, what is Ramadan? You might know what it is. It's a time of fasting for Muslims. But what you don't know is if you live in an Islamized society, it doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or a non-Muslim, you still have to live Ramadan. And that's what I did for I had, I think, 3 or 4 Ramadans there. And the first one is fun, it's exotic. You're like, oh, everything's, different. And by the 2nd or 3rd Ramadan, we're at 15. Okay, thank you. Things got a little more complicated because the rebel in me wanted to find his way out again. And by the time it was the last Ramadan, I was really annoyed. But I suppose I wasn't annoyed enough, because after I got married to my husband, I decided to move to Libya in 2000. And I was in Libya on September 11th, 2000, when my landlord stormed into my apartment without bothering to knock on my door, and started screaming, "The Jews did it! The Jews did it! I know they did it!" Well, I told him I was fairly sure that the Jews were not behind September 11th, and politely showed him out. I just hoped that Gaddafi wasn't behind it, because I wasn't really interested in another war. Been there, done that. So before I go to continue on to my trials, plural, I will hand it over to the lovely Katie, and she will tell you a little bit about herself. And get ready. It's going to be a whirlwind. Okay? Be right back.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all very much for coming to Elizabeth's Point. It's so lovely to see so many of you here gathered together. And I think it's so important about the work that Regina and her colleagues and her team do here. Because being out there on your own at the moment, whatever your political persuasion, but particularly if you are from the right or have some conservative or Republican leaning, it is a very lonely place. So this evening, I'd like everybody to breathe a big breath in, breathe a big breath out, and realize that you're amongst friends. Because the truth of it is, ladies and gentlemen, that you spend much of your life at the moment without realizing it, actually are holding your little breath in. We breathe really shallow breaths because we're all a little bit scared of opening our mouths and saying the wrong thing. So tonight you're amongst friends, all rules are off. You can say anything you like, particularly to me, and I am impossible to offend. So you can do your worst, and I look forward to seeing that from you later. My name is Katie Hopkins. I'm known as the female Farage. I have better teeth and breath. I've been called Milo's mum, which frankly is quite rude. I used to have lighter hair. Angry Ellen DeGeneres. Have to make it very clear at this point, I'm not a lesbian, I just have short hair, and those are different things. I even wore heels to prove it. I get called a lot of things. I get called the biggest bitch in Britain. A little bit hard, because I'm only 130 pounds, thank you, sir. I spy husband number 4. The book's called Rude. My advice is not to read it if you are of a sensitive disposition. And what I do is stand up and say it as I find it. I am a straight, white, Christian, conservative, married, surprisingly, mother of 3 children under the age of 15. And I am proud to be all of those things. Isn't it strange that that stuff gets you a round of applause these days? I'm right up there where I come from with the endangered species list. You know, I'm right up there with the black rhino, and he has an advantage because he's black. Yeah, little off color. I have 3 children under 15. Most of my Muslim friends have 15 children under the age of 3. I'm only joking, I don't have any Muslim friends. And what I do is I go about the world showing people the reality from the road. I go to the places other people don't want to go, prefer not to go, where the boys in the studios don't choose to go. I sleep on Skid Row to better understand what it means to live on Skid Row. I stay at the migrant camps to better understand the feral humans that we are importing into our countries. Across the Med from Libya to Italy with the migrants to understand the young men of fighting age that are coming to invade our lands. And I spent time in no-go Sweden, where I was spat at, told to go suck my mum, intimidated and threatened, and was the only white woman there. I went to get off a bus in Rinkeby. It's a suburb. It's just 2 stops out from Stockholm. Went to get off a bus, and a lady said, no, wrong face, wrong hair, wrong place. This lovely migrant lady trying to stop me getting off a bus because she didn't want anything bad to happen to me because I was a white person in the wrong place in a suburb of Sweden. And those are the truths of our road that no one wants to talk about, but that we need to show. I recently came back from your southern border, and I stood outside the Catholic Charities. There are a group of Catholic Charities shelters down there. I stood outside of that place as 3 Border Force minibuses Ubered migrants from Mexico into your country. And the woman from the shelter came out, the Catholic Charities, and she shouted at me because I was filming all of this. And she said, "You want to film this? You want to film this? You want to put these people in danger?" As the migrants came off of the Border Force transit. She said, "The people that traffic them here will know they are here and will come and extort more money from them and their families." The direct transportation of migrants into your country by the Border Force that's supposed to be protecting your country. These are the truths that no one wants to talk about, and these are the truths that need to be shown. And it is my pleasure and my privilege to do it. I see this as a way of fighting for our countries, and I'm proud of them. I don't like to talk down about my country. I was supposed to fight for my country. It's all I ever wanted to do. I was sponsored through university by the Royal Intelligence Corps. My father said they must have got the applications mixed up in the post and I got someone else's. I like to remind my father that this nose came from somewhere and it came from him. It's blighted my life. And I went through the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. I started as one of 30 girls. They used to call us the lumpy jumpers. Some lumps were more disappointing than others. And we came out as 8 girls at the end. 8 of us made it through. And I guess the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst is a bit like your West Point, but just better. And I signed up. It's a really dangerous joke, that, in America. I signed up for 35 years. I signed up with a regular commission in the Royal Intelligence, and I was going to be the first female general. That's what I signed up for. That's what I was going to do. I promised them I'd never have children nor date a man. I made those commitments early on. Now, as it turns out, I'm also epileptic. It's chapter 14, I think, in the book. And I lied to be able to get through Sandhurst. I didn't disclose my condition, which at the time was fits that I could hide. And I understand now. I believed if I made my way through Sandhurst and proved that I was physically capable, that my condition would not hold me back. And I did that, and I received the Adjutant's Award for Athletics Achievement. I was the 800-meter runner for the Army. But after I left, I had to be medically discharged when my epilepsy was in fact found on my medical paperwork. And I realize now, I'm older, I'm wiser, I'm a lot more sensible since I've met Elizabeth. And I've realized that an epileptic with a semi-automatic weapon might not be the best idea ever. So, and you shouldn't lie, tell my children. So I fight for my country now in different ways. And I fight for my country by fighting for the good men and women who love that place as much as I do and don't want to see it fall. And that's really my message here in America, is do not fall as we have fallen. Do not let yourselves become what we have become. And I know for many of you, the fear is, of course, that it is already here. The fear is, of course, that you can already see what's happening in my country happening here. And it's very clear to see. First up, they go for your family. Tear apart the family unit. Make it so that 2 mums are just fine. Make it so that 3 mums are normal, or maybe 2 dads. See, look here, this book about 2 penguins bringing up their son. Make it so that trans is the way to be. Bring in groups into our schools to encourage children to transition. A parent I know went into school midway through the term for a parent-teacher conference, and only to find out midway through a term that their son was now actually a daughter. And the school had transitioned that child, because in the UK, a school can transition a child without parental consent, without informing the parent. And that's where we're at. 4-year-olds in British schools are taught LGBTQ issues. Now, I have no problem with anything anybody wants to be. I don't care if you want to dress up as a flamingo and pretend you're a bird. You do that. Do it in the town centre, do it in the high street, have fun. But don't ask me to believe that you're a flamingo. You can chop the legs off a cat. It does not make it a slug. I know this to be true. But this is the stuff they're forcing into our children. My youngest daughter is 15 years old. She's at college. The rest of her class were awarded additional marks last week if they went on the climate change strike. Rewarded for the wrong behavior. Rewarded for accepting the thought that the school wants them to think. I have been banned from schools. I am not allowed to speak in schools in Wales. Children in Welsh schools asked me to come and speak. I told them, fine, you find a venue, you have your headmaster approve it, I'll come. Had a speaking tour arranged. The government minister for Wales came out and said that if I was allowed on school properties, their funding would be withdrawn. This is the level of sort of indoctrination, but also the mandating of one way of thinking. And what upsets me so much here in America is that Thanksgiving is really the sign of that. So many families I know no longer are able to have Thanksgiving dinners together successfully because the divisions pushed down deep into their family are too raw. One American mother said to me, you know, Katie, there's only 3 things you say at Thanksgiving dinners. Oh, really? Well, that's excellent. Well done, you. And those are the 3 sentences you utter as a mother in order to survive Thanksgiving dinner, and I think it's true. The second thing they come for after your family is your flag. And I don't mean just literally. One of the most joyous things about this great country is your flag. To see your flag flying, I don't know if you're aware of it, your flag flies so proud over so many buildings. It just overwhelms me. I love it. I think on the radio today, actually, I was saying that people could get in if they came dressed as the flag. I just love it. I love everything about it. And we don't have that anymore. So we don't fly the Union flag. You won't see our flag flying. And actually, the St. George's Cross, the Red Cross that you see, that's now become an offensive article. So a gentleman in London had the St. George's Cross up for the football. It was because England were playing. That's the time we get that flag out. He was told by the people that run the property that he rented, if he did not remove the St. George's flag, it's a racist symbol, he would be asked to leave the apartment block that he rented in. We have lost that sense. You are no longer allowed to be patriotic. You are no longer allowed to be proud of your nation. It's a curious thing. It's reserved. If you're a proud Scot, you're allowed to be a Scottish national. If you're proud that you came from Arab lands, you can be proud of that culture. But we are not allowed to be proud of our heritage and what our grandparents fought for. And it strikes me that we spend far too long tiptoeing around the cultures that choose to join us. And we don't spend enough time standing up for cultures other people chose to join. It is a key thing that our culture is the culture people choose to join. If Islam is so damn fantastic, answer me this. Why always come to Christian lands? And if the place you were running from was so scary, how come you left your wives and children behind? The lies we are fed are simply beyond belief. And the final thing they come for, of course, is your freedoms. And for us, that's very real. Sadiq Khan, who I will make a point of saying is nipple height. And that's my mother's nipples. He is maybe 4 foot in heels. I'm not a big fan of short people. Sadiq Khan set up a hate crime police unit, £2.8 million, full-time officers employed specifically to police speech on social media, particularly my social media. He is de Blasio, but shorter and more Muslim. It is a shocking thing when we have our speech police, but not just our speech, but thought. If you post something on Facebook just after the New Zealand attack on the mosque, horrific attack, people posted some of their views, not against what went on, or very tragic, just views about what might happen in the wake of that. Knock, 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 Sunday morning, police at your door. Last week, in a house that I live in, but is specifically not under my name, which is why I phrase it in that manner, the police turned up at my door. My husband had just gone to do a swim drop with my child who swims a lot. Don't ask me why, I think swimming's ridiculous. Can't stand it. I'm a deeply encouraging mother. The police turned up just as he left. So one of my children and my small son was at home, knocked on the door, "Where's your mother? When's your mother coming home? Where is she? When will she be back?" My children didn't have all the answers to those questions, but they left without leaving who they were, what their names were, any way of us contacting them. It turns out that I had posted information about the latest majority Pakistani Muslim rape squad currently in court in Leeds being trialed. That information was in the public domain. A newspaper had published the information. The newspaper had published their photographs. But the same judge that sent Tommy Robinson to prison had made a retrospective order against my posting of the information into the public domain. And the police warned me that if I did not remove that material from the public domain, it would be contempt of court proceedings. The same police unit, the same judge. So they come, and they are coming. And you are not allowed to speak about Muslim paedophilia in the UK without becoming a target yourself. And so those are the things, family, flag, freedom, that they come for. But the systematic takeover of a country is very clear to see. The densely packed Muslim population that take over an area, Minnesota, Minneapolis, Dearborn. I've spent time in that mosque in Dearborn, one of the wealthiest mosques there is. Densely packed population. One white family moves out, 4 families now move in with their huge number of children. Suddenly you have mosques springing up to cater for those individuals. We naively imagine mosques to be like our churches, places of worship. Not at all. When the protest group, Pakistani protest movement, was forming for your brilliant, brilliant Howdy Modi event in Houston, how did they organize? How did they group? Where did the coaches pick up from? The mosques. 20 mosques in Houston organized the protest. Mosques are not places of worship. They are places of organization, places of mobilization. On the last attack that happened in a mosque, the police went in and found weapons cached there as well. Mosques spring up to facilitate the population. And now you have power in the hands of that population. Our London boroughs, the boroughs that elected the Muslim mayor, 95%, 85% Muslim majority. I do not believe there will ever be an opportunity for us to have a non-Muslim mayor of London because the voting base is so densely concentrated. They've got this sussed out. This is not an accident. London has a Muslim housing association, housing for Muslims only. We have a Muslim police association, policing by Muslims, for Muslims. You've had some fraudulent NYPD type Muslim cop cars that I've seen, badged up, looking like cop cars, but actually they're Muslim patrols. We have events thrown in Trafalgar Square in the heart of London, Eid celebrations, allowing that population to take control. To the extent now that in my country, I am rapidly becoming a minority. I'm a minority in London, Luton, Leicester, Birmingham, Bradford, the list goes on. By 2035, Muslim births outnumber births to all other in our country. And by 2050, my children are outnumbered. Demographics alone show my country has fallen. Our Jewish populations are already moving out. Paris fell to the Islamists a long time ago. Notre Dame did not burn down by accident. And our Jewish populations, 8,000 Jewish individuals moved out of Paris last year. I recently made a documentary, Homelands, documenting the movement of Jewish populations out of our countries because they act like a warning sign. Jewish people talk about being the canary in the coal mine. When they move, you know trouble is coming. And so when I was in Paris with Jewish families on the move, 18 families received letters to their doors saying, "We know where you live, we know what you are, we will kill you." And the French police came and told them, "There's nothing we can do, you should go." And that is happening in the UK as well. Our Jewish friends moved to Israel, and the question, of course, that we ask ourselves is, where is our Israel? Where will we go? Where will I leave my family? And it isn't that there is just a sense of being isolated or the other. It's a curious thing to me that diversity just means no white people. You know, there's a little town, Savile Town in the UK, 96% Muslim. I went there. When me and my cameraman arrived, we increased the white population by a full 2%. People talk about diversity, and you say to them, diversity, yeah, it's more diverse now I've arrived. It's a bit like racist. The definition of racist is a white person with an opinion. So we get pushed out. Our Jewish community is on the move. But more than that, you know, when they choose to come for you, they really come for you. First up, they came for my jobs. I was a columnist for the Sun newspaper, the biggest newspaper in the UK, and then Mail Online for 2 years. So they came for that job after I spoke out about migrants and the rationale for bringing over economic migrants here to take over our country. It was the chief rabbi who was involved in having me removed from the Mail Online. Curious. I was removed from my radio show. I had a morning radio show. I loved that show. I love the privilege of speaking to people stood in their kitchens in their pajamas who will tell you their secrets on radio. And that's the truth of our country, is those people in their kitchens telling you the things they feel. It was the most popular commercial radio show of a Sunday, and I was removed from that by the left. And then they come for your home. So a group of lawyers created successive litigation against me for offence that I had caused. New law was created especially for me, how kind, that said that offence didn't need to be proved, serious harm. You only needed to perceive that serious harm was done and an offence had been committed. And so because all of that litigation was backing up 17 cases against me for serious harm for things I'd said or done in newspapers, I had to sell my family home to be able to create a situation where we no longer owned anything. I no longer own anything at all. And after they came for my job and my home, they come for your kids. So they ring social services and they say that I am a insufficient mother, a bad mother. They've done this on numerous occasions, and social services absolutely rightly have to come and check on my children, and I understand that's their job and I respect them. But I do believe there are other children in the country who need their assistance and their help much more than my children, who are being reported just because people don't agree with my political views. And it's hard to explain to your children why these people are coming and asking them questions. But this is one of the tactics they use. And you may say, well, it's far-fetched, Katie. You're obviously fine as a mum. It's questionable. But if you are of my political persuasion in the UK today, you are not allowed to adopt children. So you cannot adopt. If you are a strong conservative in the UK, your ability to adopt children is no longer recognized. And so my relationship and being able to keep my children does come into question. And after they came for my kids, a couple of jihadis made a plan to behead me. One of them, the lady, she was called I think. Sure. As her wedding present from her fiancé, he was called something. She wanted my head, she said, because she is the biggest bitch of them all. Yes, I am, sister. And they practiced, actually, which was helpful from an evidence perspective. They got a shop dummy, they got a hunting knife, and they practiced chopping my head off in the middle of the night. And bear in mind, I keep everything that matters to me, which is my children, my husband. Well, I call him my current husband, keep him on his toes. In the middle of the night, a group of men came all dressed in black. They came in, they were from the security services, and they fitted my house with panic alarms. If I picked up my phone, all I had to do was drop it and the police would come. It was rigged to the station. And they put this black box, I lived on 3 floors, they put a black box at the top of my house on floor 3, and I had to run. They told me to run up the stairs, get the black box, shake the box, panic box, and the police would come. My children sleep on the 2nd floor of my home. I would never go to that 3rd floor and leave my children. And they left, having installed all of this kit. I didn't know why they installed all this kit, and they told me not to worry and to have a good night's sleep. So anyway, the couple of jihadis that were going to come and chop my head off, their plot was foiled, and they are now in prison. But my point rather being that when they've come for your jobs, they've come for your home, they've come for your children, then they come for your head. But what they can't come for and what they can never take away, it turns out, is your ability to keep telling the truth. And the joyous thing about this silencing and the taking away of our freedoms is that the more they try to silence us, the louder we become. It's why 1 million people following me on Twitter matter, because it's our way of being able to remember that we are not alone. You are not on your own. We are many. And there are others just like you who should be here, who would want to be here, who need to be here, just to touch into the fact that you're not on your own in any of this. There's many of us right here with you. And I can tell you, for all the sadness and all the, these are dark stories, I don't feel a sense of forlornness or desperation at all. It is exciting that we stand together on this. It is so exciting that 17.4 million people went into the ballot box in the UK, and they are the silenced people who need to keep their mortgage, who can't afford to lose their jobs or their heads or their children, but they went in that box and they voted to take back their country. To 64 million Americans who voted Trump. I thank you all for listening on the radio earlier. Many of you have said you heard us on the radio. Brilliant job by Regina with her contacts at the radio show for getting us on. I think I gave who's that large gentleman on the radio? Chuck. Gave Chuck a bit of a hard time today. Don't know that I'll be invited back so soon. I'm slightly frightened I was going to get sucked into the folds of skin. But anywho, 64 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. And that is hope. That is hope. And I made a promise that I will kiss every single one of them. And God damn it, I am going to do that. And we have Salvini in Italy, and he will be back in charge of Italy. You go to a Salvini rally, you will cry, you will cry, you will cry. The Swedish Democrats pushing back for the right in Sweden. We have the AfD resurgent in Germany. You've got Bolsonaro in South America. There's a reason our movements are on the march. I went to a bar the other day with my husband. A student came over in tears because he feels so alone but he's so happy he's got people like us. He's got Trump, he's got Brexiteers, he's got Boris. I am telling you that there is hope and it is strong. And Boris Johnson may well just be the Trump kind of relationship that we need. Boris and Trump together could be like Reagan and Thatcher, but just with really shit hair. So, you know, I've made it very clear, this silly women have never been more disappointing. This stupid woman that's now suggesting that Boris once grabbed her thigh 20 years ago. She should be so lucky. I've seen the state of it. I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. Boris Johnson grabbed my thigh. I would not wash for 20 years after. But Boris Johnson has had more women than Clinton. And I mean Hillary. Anyway, widely off subject. My point is, we're in for a tough time. This is a tough road we walk. But there's three things I need to ask from you. One, remember your truths. Know what you are, know what you stand for. Don't let anyone tell you any different, and be proud of what you are. Number two, do not be spoon-fed some fake nonsense from anyone. Do not allow anyone to change your mind. And number three, you keep doing this. You keep getting together. You find another person. You bring them along. And when you go vote 2020, you take 2 people with you. Those are the 3 things I need from you. And you have my word. I will never leave you. I stand with you. And together we get furious and we fight back. Thank you very much indeed.
Isn't she something? So proud to be standing with her. And now I get to tell you, I mean, have any of you wondered why it's called Katie and the Wolf? There is a reason. Katie and I have a weekly show on a website called encountertruth.com. Take that down. And if you want more, if you want your weekly dose of Katie Hopkins, all you need to do is sign up. You can sign up right outside. We have sign-up sheets, and you will be sent information on how to. It's a subscription-based website, but the great thing is you get to interact with Katie and me. And our shows are every Thursday at 1 p.m. Mountain, 2 p.m. Central, and you get to ask questions. So Katie and I do our chit-chat. She in her pajama, I'm in my pajama. Well, you won't see that. We are fully, we look like this. It's just pants that look different, but like I said, you won't see that. And you get to interact with us. So we would urge you, if you'd like to stay in touch with us, come join us every Thursday at 1 p.m. Mountain. So that's why it's called Katie and the Wolf. And if you want more fun, come join us. So, how to top what Katie just said? I mean, my head was never chopped off. At least no one that I know of tried that. I don't really think I need any of that, and I'll leave that to Katie and for her to handle it. My story is different in that I also, it sounds a little strange, my story's different in that but I also lost my job. I was an English teacher when I returned from Libya. Back home to Austria, to a country that had changed dramatically since I left in 1997. I saw the changes in the streets because all of the Bosnian refugees who had flocked into Austria during and after the Bosnian War. And Austria was kind enough to take them in, but you could see the very gradual changes that all of a sudden, when you're away for maybe half a year or almost a year, and you come back, and you notice the changes. You don't notice them when you live in a country permanently. And I saw that. And like I said, I returned to Austria, had my child, got my degree, and started working as an English teacher. And I started reading a book. When all of a sudden, after reading the book, all the chips fell into place. I finally understood everything I saw and experienced in Kuwait and Libya and Iran as a small child. And the book frightened me because I was alone. And like Katie said, you shouldn't be alone. That's why we appreciate it that you're here. You should not be alone, because then, if you're alone, you get all sorts of strange thoughts, and you don't want that. You need to be sober, you need to be educated, and you need to be able to analyze. Threat analysis, I think it's called. And you need to be able to do that. You can't do that on your own. So I found a group of people, and first I educated myself more about Islam, found some people both in Austria and in the United States with my language skills, which were quite helpful in this case. And I began the journey of teaching fellow Austrian citizens about Islam and what it does to our Austrian society. And I was asked by the Austrian Freedom Party to give 12-hour seminars, 3 weekends, 4 hours each. And in one of those seminars, as they grew more and more popular, because people were in need of information, and those seminars, by the way, those those PowerPoint presentations were fully sourced. And as they got more and more popular, what happened was that a young journalist infiltrated those seminars and surreptitiously recorded them and reported me to the authorities. And to make a long story short, I was accused of hate speech, and I had to stand trial in Austria, in my beloved country of Austria. And it wasn't any Muslims who reported me, it was my own people. And as it says in the musical Jesus Christ Superstar, the end is just a little harder when brought about by friends. And that's what happens. And that's what happened to me. So I stood trial for hate speech. And when the judge realized that hate speech wasn't going to fly, there was no hate speech, she added another charge at her own discretion, which was called denigration of religious teachings of a legally recognized religion in Austria. It was, in effect, a blasphemy charge. I knew then and there that there was no escape. And so it came. I was found guilty on the denigration charge. I was acquitted of the hate speech charge. And I was forced to pay a fine. I took the case to the next level, lost. Took it to the next level, lost. Took it to the Supreme Court, lost. And after the Supreme Court, I went to the European Court of Human Rights. But I think you are going to wonder, what was it that I said that was so terrible? Well, during the seminars, I said a lot of things. Again, fully sourced. And it was during one of the lively conversations that we had that we discussed Muhammad's marriage to a 6-year-old and the consummation of that marriage when she was 9. And I was cognizant at the time that you were not allowed to say, and God bless the First Amendment, Muhammad was a pedophile. And because I couldn't say that, and I wouldn't have said it anyway, I asked a rhetorical question because I was actually looking for another word to describe this behavior. So I said, what would we call this behavior if not pedophilia? And that's exactly what got me in trouble. I didn't even say Muhammad was a pedophile. I asked a rhetorical question. So, I took this case to the European Court of Human Rights, which you can only do once everything is settled in your own country. You can then take it to this supranational court, which is a so-called Council of Europe court. Don't mix it up with the European Union. It has its own court system. The Council of Europe includes such wonderful freedom-loving countries as Azerbaijan, the judge of which was on the panel of judges for my case. No wonder I lost. And it took 6 years for the European Court of Human Rights to decide whether or not I had a right to freedom of speech, to say what I wanted to say, and to ask a question that was fact-based. I never lied, I never stole, I never killed anybody. I just asked a question. Imagine how my mother felt about her daughter. It was terrible. So, in October, actually just a year ago, a few days before my mother passed away, I received notice that the court had decided, and the court decided that my right to freedom of speech was actually the Muslim's right not to be offended. It supersedes my right to freedom of speech. Let's put it that way. So they have a right not to be offended, and I don't have any right to freedom of speech when it comes to all of that. Took them 6 years to decide that. And if you are so inclined, you can actually look up the entire verdict online. Read it and weep. Because I just told you one part of the terrible ruling. There's so much more in there. The court doesn't want any Muslim uprisings. It's another thing they said. After the end of October, I immediately came here to the United States to raise money for one last shot to have this terrible ruling overturned. And we had a 3-month sort of grace period to get this done. We scrambled because, of course, you had Christmas holidays in the meantime. And for 40,000 euros, lawfare, I was able to get nothing. The court said, we're not giving you permission to reopen the case. So the case is now completely settled, and to the detriment of all of Europe and all of its subjects, not citizens, to the detriment of my children and your children, because you are still part of the Council of Europe. It's not the European Union, so Council of Europe is still, concerns you as well. And I'm really sorry for losing this case. I did all I could. I fought hard, so did my lawyer, so did all of you who at one point or another donated to my defense fund, for which I'm extremely grateful. But we lost, and it doesn't look good for Europe. I think when it comes to freedom of speech, it's over and done. I accept that. I have to. I don't have a choice. But what I don't have to accept is when it comes to my beloved United States and the First Amendment, and I see that your First Amendment, your right to freedom of speech, is under siege. And I've made it my mission, together with Katie, who's going to marry President Trump, of course. Husband number 5. Oh yeah, you're 4. You're 4. Yeah, exactly. But I'll let you figure that out afterwards, okay? But it's Katie's and my mission to wake you guys up, okay? To tell you, you need to go out and vote. You need to protect, to fight for this. This is not a living and breathing document, right? Do not change a single word. Something that is perfect does not need to be changed, right? So don't change it. It's in your hands. Katie and I will stand by your side. We will be here again if you want us back and you need some pep talk, right? We'll come back. Okay? That is my mission. I won't speak out in Europe anymore, but I will come here and I will stand by your side and I will fight for the First Amendment. I will fight for the Constitution. I will help you re-elect President Trump. And together with the United States, one of these days we're looking for your help. Together with you, with the United States, you're going to come back to Europe and you're going to save us once again. But you need to be strong for that, okay? Because after America, there's no place to go. If you fall, it's over. If you fall, it's over. If you have crazy lunatics like Elizabeth Warren or, God help us, AOC, or, there's plenty of other lunatics out there. If they ever come into power, God help you. And it's up to you. It really is. I can't vote. I'm not dead. Maybe if I were dead, I could vote. But I'd rather live and stand by your side. And with that, I think I did all the pep talk I could give you, right? I mean, what more can I say? It's always great to be back in the US. I always breathe a sigh of relief when I'm finally able to speak my mind again. I don't have to self-censor anymore. It's not a lot of fun, the prior restraint and self-censorship. So thank you for having us here. Thank you, Regina, for organizing this. It's always lovely to be here. I think we should give Regina a round of applause. Thank you for coming out here tonight. And I'll open it up for some Q&A with Katie and me. Let me thank you for coming here once again. And if you have books that you've already purchased and have not had either one of us sign, please come up to us after the Q&A. And if you have not purchased a book, I think there's nothing left from Katie, right? You're all sold out, honey. Sorry. You're totally spent. But my book is still available if you want to know more about my case, which I only touched upon briefly. Do we have a microphone for questions? No, so you're going to have a loud voice. Yes, please stand up and speak out. We'll try to repeat the question. I need some water, so you do the first question.
Okay. So, yes, sir. The Queen Mum. Yeah, thank you. So what about the Queen Mother? Where's she? So 23rd of June 2016, 17.4 million brilliant people went out and voted Brexit. I've been married twice, and still that remains the best night of my life. It's all set to change, though, so... The Queen, when Boris needed to shut down Parliament because of the nonsense, he went to the Queen and asked her, and she agreed to shut down Parliament. If you ask me what the Queen thinks, she's sick of it. She's sick of the indecision, she's sick of the politicians, and she's sick of her country being on hold, but I'm not the Queen. I mean, you could be. I can be persuaded. So, I think the Queen is with us. She's with Boris, for sure. Supreme Court just came out. 11 Supreme Court judges. Never in our constitutional history have they ever made a decision on politics, ever. They came out, they overruled the Queen. They sent Parliament back to work the next day. Even though they've been arguing, fighting for it, they sent them back to work. For the first time in British history, 11 Supreme Court judges, 10 of whom voted to remain in the EU, voted, overruled Boris, overruled the Queen. So that's what's going on, but I feel fairly sure she wants us to get on with it. I really believe that. I mean, she also has many troubles in her own family at the moment with Meghan Markle. Why we have allowed trailer trash into our royal family is quite beyond me. I just say one thing in Prince Harry's defense before I shut up. Prince Harry used to be so much fun. He used to shoot animals, he used to go hunting, he used to turn up naked in Vegas with hot girlfriends. He used to be the best fun on the planet. He met Meghan Markle and he turned into the vegan you don't want to be sat next to at the wedding. It's a real shame. We hope he has to get over it and move along. Anyway, summary, good.
The gentleman?
How do you prohibit Sharia law without violating the First Amendment?
You don't really have to, as far as I know. I mean, doesn't it say, what is it, Bill, help me, is it Article 6, where it says the law, your law reigns supreme? Is it Article 6?
They're still out there.
Well, then you've got to do something. You've got this. Why are you even thinking about allowing this to happen? You've got this. What else do you need? And you've got the power of the people.
Brotherhood and care operate in this
Well,
country.
ask your elected
Open
officials.
land freely. They're a worldwide terrorist organization. Bingo.
Okay. Fair enough. And this is the level of frustration. And this is the frustration that boils over when we aren't able to have these debates. I totally get it. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
I suspected, we all heard, that this is going on over in England. I wasn't aware of so much in Austria. But it seems like to me, and it's a warning to all of us, that you're being taken over by within. You came within a hair's breadth of the Nazis taking England. That's what surprises me so, that people aren't standing up and saying, not again.
Yes, absolutely right. So why aren't people standing up and saying not again when we came within a hair's breadth of being taken over by the Nazis? And of course that's absolutely accurate. And one of the things that's been so disappointing, it's something I smell over here as well, is the leftist Jewish lobby allying itself with the Muslims. So in the UK, I'm going to speak specifically about the UK, we have something called the Board of Deputies. It's a Jewish organization that represents the synagogues. They are in bed with the Muslim Council. If the Muslim Council wants to say something, it uses the Jewish Board of Deputies to deliver the messaging that they want. I am unclear why our Jewish communities think this is in some way going to help or save them. It will not. But it was the Jewish Board of Deputies that had my film, Homelands, about Jewish people being forced out of Paris and Europe, shut down on Amazon Prime because they didn't want to offend the Muslims in our country. I mean, this is the level we're falling, but you're quite correct that the takeover happens from within. And what happens is that structurally, like the scaffolding of the takeover is in place before people start to become cognizant of the change when they see things like our school entrance. In most of our schools, state schools in the UK, 71% Muslim, 21% white British. People start to see that and realise we're taken over, but by that point it's too late because every British town now has a Muslim mayor. London has Muslim mayoral authority, the Muslim Police Association. We didn't take Asia Bibi, the Christian lady, because we did not want to upset Muslim communities. And for example, after Elizabeth's ruling, we had a journalist, many of you will know her, Brittany. She was banned from the UK on the basis of future hate speech, as yet unsaid, that might upset local communities, i.e. Muslims. Future hate speech, as yet unsaid. Yeah. so I think. Well, I don't know. It's emotional, isn't it, when people stand up like that and talk? Okay, good. Are you armed? Because that'll be smashing. So I want to thank you. What's your name? Marguerite. I think the whole room would applaud just your honesty of just being. I think being able to stand up. This is why these meetings so matter. This is why you so matter, because being able, it's emotional for me, being able to stand up and speak that your soul like that is so powerful for the room, because it shows people that you're not alone. This is how we feel, okay? This is not heard anywhere, but it matters. The thing I would refer to, I spent nearly 2 months in South Africa with the white farmers being genocided from their lands. White farmers in South Africa are at about 8% whites now left in South Africa. 8% they think is about the ratio. 5% is where it ticks over into civil war. So white South Africans are preparing for civil war. The Sudlanders, the organization, are gearing up, preparing to make a last stand. So they will retreat to defendable space. They will prepare to make the last stand, weapons training, arms caches, how do you get energy supply, how do you get transport fuel, etc. And they are prepared to, they say, die in their boots for the love of their land. So I believe in time we will retreat to a defendable space and we will make a last stand. And I think to the lady's point about how we let this happen, the joy in this, and I always try to find the hope, is Poland and Hungary, who are making that stand for Christian culture, for marriage, for the family. They will not let themselves fall. They are not going to fall as quickly. So for many of my regular families, we are looking to Hungary and Poland, as the place that we might move to in time. I believe that's what we will do, is retreat to defendable space. 2, 3. She's so good at this. She's
Well,
like boss.
First, I need to know,
I try.
what time are you off work tonight?
Yes,
You know, I often hear people talk about America's at the end. I feel like we're going through this massive reawakening in America.
I don't think America's at the end.
I don't either. So it's important sometimes to take a satellite view and other times to get down in the dirt in the day-to-day activities. And with this deadline, you remind me of the president right now. With this deadline that Boris has given for Brexit is the
Yes,
next big
31st.
thing on the world stage. And Trump's got his back, and he's probably got Trump's back as well. But is it going to happen? Is the 31st, what do you see? What do you speculate?
Yes, it's going to happen.
Yeah. So I'm going, 31st of October. Boris has said, nearly called him Trump then, they both have the same hair. Boris is marginally better. Boris said out on the 31st, and I believe him. I'm going with him. I've got to believe him. And I honestly believe if he gets us out on the 31st of October, Britain will feel renewed. 17.4 million people, and the others who can't say because they need to keep their dinner party friends, whatever, will feel a sense of renewal. And that Trump, Boris, when they are together on the White House lawn, that's just going to be, beyond Trump being re-elected in 2020, there's some big events coming up. Way more exciting than the birth of any of my children. Very exciting indeed. No. So he has said, it's very clever language Boris is using. I don't know the how, I haven't been told. But he has said, we will obey the law, but we will be out on the 31st. So they know a mechanism. This guy behind him, Dominic Cummings, he is the Antichrist. He's brilliant. Like he's the husband number 6. Yeah. But yeah, so we're going to leave. Let's go with, we are out on the 31st. If that happens, you all have to have 18 beers and celebrate for me, because that is going to be a great day. Sorry, should have been in the mic.
Ma'am, we had one gentleman, but I would like you. Go ahead.
I'm drinking your water.
to say is that I think that for too long we've kind of been in a trance. I mean, the political threat
that it's been going on for so long. But unlike Europe, you have those boards in the school boards. So again, you have the tools, you can change them. We can't. There's no way we can change anything in our schools. It's top down, that's it, it's indoctrination. Unless you got a child like mine who's a bit of a rebel too. Must run in the family. I think did I pass you? I think I asked you and then, yes.
Yes. So lots of changes going on at Fox News. You probably will have known, or if you're part of Fox News, watch it, Judge Janine, the issue she had when she was suspended. So Judge Janine, I don't know if you know, she does a great opener. But that opener now is very hard for her. She has to go into the studio 2 days before her show and record the opener in order that it can be passed up the chain and signed off, in order that the juniors who are there, who are the leftists, can agree with what Judge Janine is allowed to say. You try doing a daily show that's supposed to be fresh and current and relevant in America today with the politics cycle, the news cycle you've got, and record an opener 2 days in advance. So that's Judge Janine. So she's skating on thin ice and she knows it. Then there's the treatment of wise and noble contributors who I admire. They now have to submit what they're going to say on a piece of paper signed. If they deviate from what they've promised they will say, they are told on no uncertain terms they will never be used again. So now you cannot have any free thought when you're on the air. You can only say what's been approved by the leftist controllers. And there is now a ban list that I am part of. We are not allowed back on air for any foreseeable future because our opinions are now no longer approved by the new Fox. And that's that feeling you can get. That's what Trump's alluding to because, of course, he knows what's going on through Hannity. So one assumes there will be a new news network soon enough with maybe Judge Janine Hannity, something like that. So there will be a new Fox. Hold your breath and I'll get back on that. Newsmax, yeah. You have alternatives, yeah.
Okay.
But that's what's going on at Fox.
Yes, please. And then we have one more question. So, but I will ask Regina to pick that because I don't want to,
No, don't have a fight.
No. Okay, go ahead.
What?
Katie and I are going to work that out tonight.
I think for one, what's your name? Sorry? Emily. You've got it already. Yeah, you got it by the bucket load, sweetie pea. So when I went to Trump's inauguration, there's all these women there because they'd already bought their plane ticket because they thought Clinton was going to win and then they didn't want to lose their money. So they showed up in their really ridiculous hats anyway. Half of them walked down the street with placards saying, "Save the climate, save the environment, save the polar bears." Some had like, "My vagina is made of steel." Ew. I don't need to see that any day of the week soon. Others was like, "Go vegan, don't eat meat." And when you ask these women, "What are you here for?" they all had a different response because they don't actually know what they're doing there. They just know that they want to be a bigger victim than the one next to them. So we reclaim this stuff by saying, "Screw you, me too. I am in control of my sexuality, and if I want to use it to emotionally blackmail some guy, I'm going to do just that." And number 3, I do not give offense. You choose to take it, and you need to make better decisions. You own your issues. We need a little bit more of that, and that's how I'm bringing my girls up right now. Yeah.
Is there, based on your friendships and your time in the Muslim countries, is there a substantial number of Muslims that are allied with us in these freedom causes?
No. I don't know of any. They have not come to see me. Who? Tawhidi? Why is he still a Muslim if he criticizes his religion so badly?
So the answer
That's the only question. You probably have a better answer.
Thinking about a journalist who passed away a couple of years ago, wrote for the Wall Street Journal, Fuad Ajami.
Oh yeah, Fuad Ajmi.
What do you think? And, you know, a lot of the Muslims were Christians before they were forcibly,
Well, you know, there are many Muslims who are likely Muslims in name only. But I don't see any demonstrations when there is, remember any demonstrations in the streets following the Sri Lanka attacks? That massacre? I didn't see any. So as long as I don't see any of those who are supposedly moderate and on our side, not showing up with organized mass demonstrations to support Christians who were massacred, whose families were massacred, brutally massacred on Easter Sunday. I don't believe in the mythical moderate Muslim. They might be there, but they ain't showing their faces. And as long as they're not doing that, they're not on my side. Like Katie said, you got to own the issue, and that goes for moderate Muslims as well.
Can we give them one more rousing round of applause and thank him for being here?